So you guys remember how I was saying in my last episode review for the Bad Batch how season 2 kind of been feeling a bit underwhelmed, like underwhelming um so far. I am so happy this episode came to play because I was excited about this episode. This episode was exciting to me. And maybe it had to do with the Jedi and the Wookiees in this episode. But this episode, even though it could, I feel like this episode was the most interesting out of all the episodes. Or one of the most interesting episodes since like episode 3, which was, what's it called? The Solitary Clone. This one's called Tribe. So towards the beginning of the episode, the Bad Batch is trying to make a deal. Omega and Tech, Omega and crap, that guy, Echo. Omega and Echo are left by the ship. Echo gets the ship prepped. Omega hears a noise, so she investigates the noise, getting the Bad Batch involved in something really dominant in this episode. And she sees a Wookiee getting mistreated by these droids. She interferes, essentially getting the Bad Batch involved. And it turns out that this Wookiee is no average Wookiee. It's a Jedi. And it's not no average Jedi either. Like, in terms of being like a Jedi that we haven't met before. We met this Jedi before. We met this Jedi in like, I think it was a 3-part arc. Where like, there was this like 3-part story where the Jedi younglings got their kyber crystals at Hoth, and they were accompanied by Ahsoka and Yoda. And then later on, Ahsoka gets kidnapped in this arc, and there were a group of younglings, Jedi younglings, that came to Ahsoka's aid. One of those younglings was a Wookiee. That same Wookiee is in this episode, and that Wookiee is named Ganji. Which I have his name put up in case if I ever forget how to like mentally translate. And I enjoyed this episode. This has to be the best episode since episode 3 for me. Ganji is kind of nervous at first around the Bad Batch because the last time he's seen the Bad Batch was when, or I should say the Bad Batch, I should say clones. Last time that Ganji saw clone troopers was when Order 66 was enacted. So he has every reason to distrust the Bad Batch. Because last time he saw the clones, they were trying to kill him. Omega and the other clones reassures Ganji that they didn't enact Order 66. They didn't enact the Jedi Purge. That they're not working with the Empire. So essentially, the Bad Batch formulate this plan to try to get Ganji back to his tribe. Which means going to Kashyyyk. And in the Star Wars timeline, at this point in the Star Wars timeline, excluding Rebels, because I know we've seen Wookiees in Rebels. Which Rebels takes place after Bad Batch. The last time we saw Kashyyyk was when Order 66 was happening, and when the clone troopers helped with the massacre of the Wookiees. Was we can clearly see with like the holiday special who is like decanonized, but certain parts of the holiday special is canonized. And like with like Black Chrysanthus, I believe that's the Wookiee's name in the Book of Boba. Kind of like with the Jedi, not all the Wookiees were wiped out. There are still a fair many. And in like Rebels, we saw like a decent amount of Wookiees. So like, I was very excited to go back to Kashyyyk to see just how many tribes there were just still living at Kashyyyk after what the Empire did. And so, essentially, we see the Trandoshans, which is what it is, has this Wookiee, and the Trandoshans and Wookiees have this rivalry. Essentially, Gungi gets mad at how the Trandoshan is treating this Wookiee, so he gets in there and actually, wait, Colo Lightsaber 2. And he, Jedi thinks up, get away from this Wookiee! And then race a Wookiee. And then, there were other Wookiees that came nearby after this fight took place. They go back to this Wookiee tribe. The Bad Batch offers to, aid the Wookiees in this, in their, peril. And there's this like really awesome fight where the Wookiees pushes the Trandoshan, which has the Empire, which has some Imperial equipment, and it's just so good. It's I like the fight scene, especially with Gungi and the guy, the Trandoshan that had the flamethrower, because I also did watch Star Wars Theories, a video of this episode, and I do believe he says something about how well, of course, every living thing is sensitive to getting burnt. Like if you are like human, alien, animal, whatever, you are sensitive to fire. Like, you get fire touched you get burned. But apparently Wookiees are even more sensitive to fire than us humans, I guess. But Ganji ends up beating the guy. He doesn't kill the person. These plant creatures that was in early in the episode, that Ganji told the Bad Batch not to fight because if they aren't provoked, they won't attack you. He deactivates his lightsaber. Then these bug creatures goes to the Trandoshan and webs this Trandoshan and takes him away. And then we get like Hunter talking to the chief of this particular village, and the chief said that something along the terms that, because Hunter did say that they're kids, but sadly they, due to this war, they aren't allowed to be kids. And the leader of this Wookiee tribe says, when they leave, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, when the kids leaves, the trees weep, but when they return, they rejoice, something along those terms. And that's such a beautiful saying, and I dig that. And it was a really deep quote. And then essentially the episode ends. And in this, like, before the episode ends, and before the Wookiees beat the Trandoshans, they found out that there was a Jedi there. They didn't know there was a Wookiee Jedi. But I honestly really thoroughly enjoyed this episode. This, like I said, this has to be the best episode since the Solitary Clone episode. And I don't need exactly like a show that only like that has a Jedi lead with it. Andor is a perfect example for me because I did enjoy Andor. And there's no Jedi leads in that. Sure, Andor it has this little burn to it, but Andor for me is a really good show, and I don't need a show that has a Jedi lead in it. And there were episodes in season 1 where I did enjoy for the Bad Batch, and like I said, prior to this episode, my favorite episode was the Solitary Clone. No Jedi whatsoever in it. I knew Genji was going to be in this season. I just didn't know which episode. But the Solitary Clone episode was my favorite prior to this episode. Now, my favorite episodes of season 2 of The Bad Batch is the Solitary Clone and Tribe. And I thoroughly enjoyed this episode, especially with like the last 2 episodes seem like meh, somewhat of a letdown. I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. This was like a breath of fresh air for me. Tribe, if you guys aren't watching The Bad Batch, guess you guys aren't exactly a fan of everything Disney has put out for Star Wars. I get that. Solitary Clone, Tribe, Season 2 of the Clone Wars for the Bad Batch. Worth the watch. Worth the watch. So, what do you beautiful people think of this episode? Let me know in the comment section down below. Love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Be kind to one another. And we'll talk to you fellow mutants later. And may the force be with us all.